The emergency broadcast stops mid-sentence at 11:37 a.m. Not static, not a signal interruption, just silence where a voice was telling you to stay calm, stay inside, wait for instructions. You flip channels, nothing. You check your phone for alerts, no service. You try the internet, dead. Every official channel, every government frequency, every emergency system that spent the last 72 hours telling you help was coming has gone completely, utterly silent. And in that silence, you hear something worse than any alarm. The sound of 60 million people realizing simultaneously that no one is in charge anymore. No FEMA, no National Guard, no president addressing the nation, no local authorities coordinating relief. Just you, the supplies you have or don't have, and the cold mathematical reality that every system designed to save you during catastrophe has either collapsed or abandoned you entirely. This isn't a disruption. This is severance. And what happens next, what happens in the hours and days after the last government transmission dies, that's what separates people who survive from people who become statistics in a disaster no one will be left to document. The first 6 hours are cognitive dissonance. People don't believe it. They can't believe it. The government doesn't just disappear. There's always someone in charge, always a chain of command, always a continuity plan. Except when there isn't. Except when the crisis is so total, so system-breaking, that the infrastructure required to govern simply stops existing. Maybe it's a cyber attack that bricked every military and civilian network simultaneously. Maybe it's a coordinated strike that decapitated leadership faster than succession protocols could activate. Maybe it's a solar storm that fried every transformer and relay on the continent. The cause doesn't matter. What matters is the result. You are living in a country with 330 million people and zero functional government. And in those first 6 hours, most people waste time they'll never get back trying to find information that doesn't exist anymore. They drive to police stations that are empty or overwhelmed. They go to city halls where clerks are locking doors and going home to their own families. They sit in their cars listening to dead radio frequencies, hoping someone, anyone, will come back online and tell them this is temporary, this is fixable, help is still coming. You don't have 6 hours to waste on hope. You have a decision window that's closing fast, and the decision is this: do you stay where you are, or do you move?
And before you answer, understand that both choices kill people. Staying kills you if you're in a location that becomes uninhabitable once infrastructure fails. Major cities, high-rises with no water pressure, coastal areas threatened by flooding or contamination, anywhere that requires electricity, supply chains, and functioning systems to sustain human life. If you're in one of these places, you've got maybe 24 hours before it becomes a death trap. Moving kills you if you don't have a specific destination, a viable route, and the supplies to get there. Refugee columns are nightmares. Highways become parking lots, gas stations run dry, rest stops become ambush points, disease spreads through camps, violence erupts over resources, and at the end of that desperate migration, most people find that wherever they were running to is just as broken as where they left. So here's the math. If you're urban, you leave now with a plan, or you prepare to shelter long-term in a high-threat environment. If you're suburban or rural with access to water and resources, you stay, you fortify, and you prepare for what's coming to you.
What's coming is the cascade. The government didn't go silent in isolation. When central authority collapses, every system dependent on that authority collapses behind it in sequence. First goes communication. Cell towers run on battery backup for maybe 8 hours, then they're dead. Internet routing depends on server farms with power. No power, no internet. Landlines were deprecated years ago. You're in informational darkness, operating on rumors and direct observation. Second goes power. The electrical grid requires constant active management to balance load and supply. When the operators disappear, when the monitoring systems fail, the grid doesn't slowly wind down, it catastrophically destabilizes. Transformers overload, substations trip offline, the whole network collapses in a cascading failure that takes minutes once it starts. Third goes water. Municipal systems are entirely dependent on electric pumps. No power means no pressure. No pressure means no water from your top within 18 hours.
What's in the pipes drains through low points and leaks. What's left becomes contaminated through backflow as sewage systems fail and groundwater intrusion occurs. Fourth goes fuel. Gas stations can't pump without electricity. Fuel trucks can't deliver without functioning logistics networks and payment systems. What's in vehicle tanks is the last fuel those vehicles will have until refining and distribution restart, which they won't without government coordination. By day 2, grocery stores are empty. This happens faster than any model predicts because panic buying isn't linear, it's exponential. When people sense scarcity, they hoard. When they sense collapse, they take everything they can carry. Stores go from fully stocked to bare shelves in under 12 hours. And here's the critical part. There is no restocking. The trucks aren't coming. The warehouses aren't sending more. The entire supply chain from farm to processing to distribution to retail requires infrastructure, communication, and government oversight to function. Without it, food distribution stops completely. You're left with what people have in their homes, which for most Americans is less than 3 days of food. After that, hunger becomes the dominant motivation for every decision. And hungry people are dangerous in ways fed people never are. Pharmacies are worse.
The diabetics, the people on heart medication, the epileptics, the asthmatics, they've got maybe a week before their conditions become life-threatening. Pharmacies get looted early, but even if you get in, even if you find what you need, you're just delaying the inevitable. Refrigerated insulin denatures without power. You can't manufacture more without supply chains and pharmaceutical infrastructure. You watch people die slowly from treatable conditions because the systems that treated them don't exist anymore. This is the invisible crisis inside the visible one, and it claims more lives than violence ever will. Security becomes everything by day 3. When the government goes silent, law enforcement goes with it. Police don't show up when their own families are in danger, and there's no paycheck coming. Courts can't function, jails can't operate. Every consequence for crime, every deterrent against violence, every social contract that kept people civilized disappears the moment there's no authority to enforce it. This doesn't mean everyone becomes a criminal. Most people remain decent, even in crisis. But the ones who are always held back by fear of consequences are now free to act, and they do. Home invasions spike. Organized looting begins. Groups form and start systematically stripping resources from anyone weaker or less organized.
You're not dealing with random opportunists anymore. You're dealing with coordinated predation. And if you're alone, if you're isolated, if you're visible, you're a target. You fortify immediately. Brace doors with furniture. Cover windows from inside so no one can see what you have. Establish sight lines that let you observe approaches without exposing yourself. If you're in a high-rise, you coordinate with neighbors for collective defense, or you abandon the building entirely because towers become vertical prisons without elevators and running water. You establish watch schedules. Someone is always awake, always observing, always ready to wake everyone else if threats approach. You make yourself a hard target. Not the hardest, just harder than the next person over, so predators choose easier prey. And you accept that at some point you're going to have to decide about using force to defend yourself, and that decision needs to be made now, in principle, so when the moment comes, you're not hesitating. Water is your actual survival priority. The human body loses 2 to 3 liters daily through respiration, perspiration, and excretion. More if you're active or it's hot. You need to replace that or you dehydrate, and dehydration kills you in 3 days, faster if you're stressed or sick. If the municipal supply is dead, you need alternate sources immediately. Rainwater if it rains, natural sources like rivers, ponds, lakes, but all of it requires purification. Boiling for 1 minute kills pathogens if you have fuel. Chemical treatment with bleach, 8 drops per gallon, wait 30 minutes. Water purification tablets if you have them.
You cannot drink untreated water from natural sources. Giardia will put you on your back for weeks. Cholera will kill you in days. E. coli will destroy your intestines. The irony of dying from dehydration caused by drinking contaminated water won't comfort you while you're dying. Food is secondary because humans survive weeks without it. You'll be weak, you'll be hungry, you'll burn through stored fat and then muscle, but you won't die quickly. What you need is a sustainable plan for when stored food runs out. And that plan cannot be hunt and fish unless you already know how. Game becomes scarce fast when everyone with a rifle is hunting the same deer population. Gardens take months to produce. Foraging is deadly if you misidentify plants. The realistic answer is that you're going into caloric deficit and staying there. You ration what you have. You reduce activity to conserve energy. You accept that survival and prolonged collapse means losing weight and feeling hungry all the time.
The body adapts. It's not comfortable, but it's survivable. The psychological breakdown starts around day 5. Humans aren't designed for sustained crisis. We're designed for acute stress followed by recovery. When the recovery never comes, when every day is survival mode, the mind starts fracturing. Depression in people who are never depressed, anxiety attacks in people who are always stable, violent outbursts over minor provocations, parents breaking down because they can't feed their children. This is the invisible killer. It doesn't leave bodies. It just erodes the will to keep surviving until people make mistakes, take unnecessary risks, or give up. You manage it by creating routine. Wake up same time, assign tasks, maintain structure, even when structure is artificial. It's psychological scaffolding. It keeps brains functional when everything external is chaos. By week 2, a new order starts emerging. Not government. What emerges is local power based on force, resources, or both. Someone controls the well. Someone controls the distribution center. Someone has enough armed people to enforce their will. These aren't elected leaders. They're whoever was positioned and ruthless enough to seize control when central authority disappeared. Some will be benevolent. Some will be predatory. You can't choose which one controls your area. You can only choose whether to submit, resist, or relocate. And all 3 options carry the risk of death. What happens when the government goes silent is that you discover civilization was always optional. It required maintenance. It required enforcement. It required the collective agreement that rules matter and consequences exist. When the entity maintaining that agreement disappears, you find out how thin the veneer was. Most people are good. Most people want to help each other. But most isn't all. And the ones who aren't good now operate without restriction. You're not reading about collapse in a history book. You're not watching it on news footage from some other country. You're living it. Your skills, your preparation, your ability to adapt faster than the crisis evolves, these are the only things standing between you and joining the casualty count. The government going silent doesn't create the disaster. It just removes the illusion that someone else was ever going to save you. You were always your own first responder. Now you're your only responder. Act accordingly.